Hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's webinar by Auction Method. My name is Daniel West. I'm one of the co-founders of Auction Method. I'm a former auctioneer. I come from a family of auctioneers, and I've been working in the field of auctions and auction technology for longer than I care to admit at this point, but it's about 25 years or more, possibly. What we're going to be talking about today is what I would call the inbound auction engine. Another way of talking about this is mastering asset-driven marketing. And I'll go ahead and share my screen with you guys, and then we can get started on the notes. All right. So here we are. As I said, what we're talking about is an inbound auction engine. If you've heard about inbound marketing, that's a phrase that's been around for quite some time, or content marketing, then that's basically what we're talking about, right? But we're talking about it in particular with online auctions. And hopefully you'll find that some or maybe even all of this information is practical and applicable to you. At the end of the session, I do invite everyone to post their questions. You can add your questions along the way if you'd like, and then I'll answer them at the end. So, all right. So, here's the basic agenda. If you just listen to this next 1 minute or so, that's really what we're going to be talking about today, and you're going to get everything you need from that. We're just going to go into greater detail or deeper dive into it. So the basic idea here is that it's sort of an odd idea from an advertising point of view, which is that the when it comes to auction marketing, you don't have to engage in a lot of self-promotion, right? There's a way of um, doing this strategically so that you do get promoted as a byproduct of auction marketing. Um, and you don't have to focus so much just on yourself. So you'll see here the 3 points that we're basically covering is promoting the assets that you're selling, not yourself, not your ego, not your brand. That's going to be carried along with it. But what we're really talking about doing is not promoting auction events, not promoting your brand, not promoting your sales accomplishments or your logo or any of those things. Those aren't bad things. I'm not saying don't do those things, but that's not auction marketing, at least not from my point of view. What we really are marketing are the things that we're selling, the objects we're selling. And the basic idea is that if you promote the assets, then you're going to recruit the right buyers, right? So if you are promoting one particular asset type or one thing, one object, then you do a good job of promoting that, and the buyers for that particular object will come in. They'll be attracted because they see something that they want. And then, as a byproduct of the buyer showing up, the bidder showing up, competing with each other, and having a successful auction, you end up recruiting more sellers, right? Because if there's a strong buyer demand, then that's all the proof that the seller needs. You can see this cute little image down below. I just got to ask you which one appeals to you more, right? On the left-hand side, if you were receiving an ad, let's just say, and you saw a generic logo like that, the traditional gavel, something about auctions, right? Or you saw the old classic car, which one is going to pull you in? And I think the answer is obvious, right? We'd all go for the car. Very few people are going to feel motivated to do anything based upon just a image of a logo, right? All right. So the point here about the assets selling the auctioneer is one that I've already made, but I want to make it again that the things that you're selling and the way that you sell them has says more about your skill as an auctioneer than anything you could say yourself, right? The proof is in the pudding. And so the basic idea here is that you're going to take not every single lot from an auction, but you're going to take select lots, lots that are representative of the entire auction, choice lots, the ones that are have high human interest potential. These may not be your top selling, most valuable things, but they're the things that when you see the picture, you yourself are sort of motivated. It makes you feel curious or makes you feel attracted. It makes you want to click, right? So this is image based, primarily image or video based. And so you want to focus on, say, like the top 10 to 20% of the items in an auction. And by top, again, I'm not just saying your top sellers, but those things that you think that people are going to be most interested in. And so what you're going to do then is you treat each lot as sort of its own mini campaign where you really give a lot of marketing exposure, a lot of effort into making that one lot not just presentable, but promoted to the right audience. And the thing is that when you create these, when you focus like this, part of what you're focusing on is creating a story about the item that you're selling. And this varies, right? The story that you tell is going to be quite different if you're selling an excavator versus a llama versus a an old grandfather clock, right? So the story is obviously going to be quite different, but the story being told should appeal to the community or the people, the market that would be interested in that particular item. And so you want to craft the story that you tell about the item to fit the community, the sort of the vibe of the community, while also reflecting the facts of the item, how old it is, what condition it is, all the dimensions, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole point is that when you do a really good job of creating rich listings, lot listings, you do a great job of promoting them, the outcomes that you get from that incredible competition that auctions naturally drive, that becomes the proof, all the proof that your sellers need to consign with you. So we can call this the inbound auction engine or the flywheel. And we've already described basically how it works, but we're going to start right here with the asset story, right? So this is where you do a really good job of presenting the chosen lot. Again, it's not every single lot in the auction. That would be absurd. But you are going to pick sort of you're going to cherry pick the right items from the auction. You're going to do a good job creating the story. And we're going to get to how you create the story in a little bit. And then, of course, you try to get this story or this content in front of the particular market or niche that would be interested in that particular item. That's how you end up with really highly qualified bidders. Those qualified bidders that come in and participate, they generate a lot of competition, you get good results, they trust the process after having experienced you. That allows them to engage in word of mouth advertising on your behalf, talking about the great deals they got and what a wonderful experience they had with you and how much fun it was. All of that combined together with the sales results will lead to new consignors. New consignors are part of the market. So when you're promoting the sale, promoting the particular lot that's being sold, you're actually you're promoting yourself to a pool that includes both buyers and sellers. And the sellers may not be there at the exact same time that your auction is happening, but they will hear about it. Um, as a result of attracting sellers by doing a good job with your auction marketing, you're going to get more and better assets to sell. And that's where the wheel starts again. But you're never starting from scratch. You don't have to start from scratch. The whole point is that this is a flywheel. It gets builds momentum, right? It's an engine and it keeps going, doing the same thing again and again. So you don't stop. You don't have one successful auction and then stop, right? The idea is to get this thing started and then to keep it moving. So the basic, I don't know if you could really call it three pillars, but the basic idea behind the engine is how you promote, how you do your storytelling, and then basically counting on the snowball effect that we've described so far. So I oftentimes liken auction advertising to fishing. And so there's a number of different kinds of fishing to be done depending on how much time you have, what kind of resources you have, what kind of fish you're going for, right? Clearly, all fishing is good fishing. Some is just more effective than others. The problem that I see again and again and again when it comes to the promotion of auction events is that auctioneers are throwing sort of a big net out. They just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It's based on luck and hope. It's not scientifically sound, right? And there's nothing wrong with netting. I think it's a good idea. Throw a net out if you think that's going to work for you. The problem is that these generic ads that reach everybody, you can spend a lot of money. In fact, it's easy to spend many thousands of dollars on a broad net and not really get any results at all. Or even worse is like you might get results, but you don't know what to attribute it to because your net is cast so wide. What I propose, and net fishing, by the way, is appropriate if you have the resources. So if you're like Ritchie Brothers Auctions or one of the big mega auctioneers, then you can take it into account what I'm saying, but apply the fact that you're going to use multiple fishing strategies. If, however, you're a small to medium-sized auction company or you work for a small to medium-sized auction company, this part is going to become a lot more important. And what you're really doing is, what I would call targeted advertising, hand gathering. I actually put this picture of a spearfisher in there for that reason. You yourself are going to go out and look for the fish or the buyers, the bidders that you want to catch. It's a lot more high energy, a lot more work, but it's also much more likely that you're going to learn something about the market that you're trying to target, which will be super helpful. And it will also allow you to pick exactly the right bidders to attend your auction. Basically, the idea is that you find the community that's interested in the asset. Depending on what you're selling, there's going to be some group of people somewhere talking about that very thing. Sometimes in almost all cases that I'm referring to here, what we're talking about is a community that is actually interested in the very lot, the thing that you're selling, the object that you're selling. There are times where the community that you're trying to target is not necessarily interested in a particular object, but they are interested perhaps in the sale characteristics. So, for example, people who are resellers, they're interested in seeing if they can get a lot of inventory for a little amount of money. So finding the right community does vary, but for the time being, I'm just sort of assuming that the community that we're talking about is the community of people who would be interested in purchasing the lot that we're talking about promoting here. And then, of course, the community itself is going to do the sharing. So I put a little gold star on here suggesting that there's a story time, and there is. You may already be familiar with this story if you've heard me talking before, but I got to tell it again. It's my favorite story. So the very first timed online auction that I ever conducted in my life, uh, on my own software platform, was a 1976 ambulance. And we had been contacted by the seller who was a bankruptcy trustee. He said, I have this junky old car sitting in a storage shed. I'm paying a lot of money every month to store it, and the thing is just garbage. It's covered in cobwebs and all dusty, and it's not functional. No ambulance company in their right mind would want this thing. Basically, see if you can make it go away. I thought, well, they didn't actually want me to auction it. They just wanted me to like get rid of it, make the car go away. And I was like, no, I want to try to sell this thing. So we went through some hoops and we were able to secure an online auction for this one single 1976 ambulance. Well, I didn't know anything about ambulances and certainly didn't know anything about classic ambulances. So I started searching, right? That was it. I got my spear and I went out into the internet looking around. What can I find? And I thought, well, this ambulance looks a lot like hearse, like an old hearse car. So like for cemeteries and stuff like that. So I started looking, and I found a group of collectors, people that collected hearse cars, and there happened to be some people that also collected ambulances in this group. It was a forum, an online forum. But there were rules in the forum that said no advertising. Don't post your cars for sale. Don't post a link to your website. None of you're not allowed to advertise. This is strictly for the enthusiasts to talk about their vehicles and what matters to them. But this is not for spamming and is not for advertising. So it's okay. I just went in, created an account, and I said, I'm brand new. I just found you guys because I'm thinking about buying an old ambulance. I found at an auction. It's a 1976 blah blah blah, whatever. And the starting bid is only $5. How much do you guys think I should spend on it? I did not put a link in there. I didn't put a picture. I didn't put anything else. None of the normal promotional stuff. I was just asking a question as if I was an interested somebody who was interested in buying it. Well, what was really interesting to me is I could see, um, there was a lot of activity. People were started responding, telling me their feedback, and eventually somebody said, "Well, can you show a picture?" So I posted a picture, and then somebody said, "Well, can you just post a link to the auction site?" And this is the funny part, is that the community invited me to promote the auction to itself, right? That's not how I started it. But they said, go ahead and post a link to it. So I did. And the funniest thing was that immediately I saw a bunch of new registrations on the website. Remember, I was brand new. Nobody had ever bid with us before. So I saw a whole bunch of new registrations. And what was funny is that some of the people registering, they were using the same handle as they did in the forums. And they were telling me in the forums not to bid, that it was not worth bidding on this ambulance and that I should ignore it. It did not look like a good deal. And then it turned out they were registering and they ended up participating in the sale. They were trying to get one over on me. Anyway, long story short, the ambulance sold to somebody who was located several thousand miles away. It sold for $7,600, the same amount as the year of the ambulance. And afterward, I couldn't believe it. I thought, who in their right mind would pay $7,600 for this pile of junk? And I thought maybe, it was somebody trying to scam me. So I contacted the buyer and he said, you don't understand. I would have sold my house to own that car because I have the entire collection with all the serial numbers in order, and that one car is the only car missing from my collection. I would have given anything. I had to win it. And then he told me later that he ended up getting married in the car. It was so important to him. It's a wonderful story. But the point was, I had to go looking for him. Had I put ads in the local newspaper or put ads on Google Ads or something like that, I would not have reached this guy. I had to go looking. And that's my point, is that a lot of times auctioneers want the cheap and easy way, or maybe not even the cheap way. They want the easy way. And so they're drawn towards the net idea. Just throw a big net. Just the bigger the net, you got to catch something. That's not true. You might catch something, but it's probably not going to be exactly what you want, right? Uh, in order to get exactly what you want, you have to go out and hunt for them, look for them. So that's my main point here when it comes to the promotion of auction items. So when promoting the items, it's not going to do you any good if you do a piss poor job of describing what it is that you're selling. How is it that you tell the story of what an item is and why a person should be interested in purchasing it from you or coming to the auction? Well, you use all media available to you. That's the content. When they talk about inbound content marketing, that's what they're talking about, is the pictures, the description, the documents, the videos, all of the media that's available to you to describe a particular item for sale. That's the content. So what does that mean? Well, for sure, it means that you want to create this basically the three parts, the three components to the story. If we look at the first line here, the first column, if you will, about perceiving value, the first thing that you want to convey in the story is the the provenance, the history of it, right? Where did it come from? What's is there now? This isn't always true, right? So, like, of course, with antiques and that kind of thing, it's easy. It's a little harder, for example, if you're selling metalworking equipment to tell a story about that metalworking equipment. But try, right? What was it? Do you know what that piece was used for? Right? Say what the equipment was actually used for. If you have a tractor, right? Sure, it's general purpose or whatever, but it was last used in October to till the ground, whatever. Tell some kind of a story about the history of the item being sold. You're also going to have to um, tell something about the functionality, right? Like what's it for? How does it work? Right? In some cases, it's very clear. In other cases, it's not. But I'm just suggesting that as a line, part of what you're suggesting or putting into the story is like its history, what it's used for, how it functions, and then of course a human component, right? That's what this last image is about having some kind of a human component. Just think about this. If you ever look at, or if you're ever flipping through a bunch of pictures, what is it that your eye naturally goes to? Even if you saw a picture of the pyramids, you're going to look at the people. If there's people in the picture, you're going to look at them. Humans are human centric. It's just part of our makeup. And so bringing in the human element when talking about a particular lot is critical. It's probably the most important out of all of these things. So, for example, if you were selling like that grandfather clock that we looked at before, you might say the previous owner said that that their visitors frequently commented on the sounds made by the clock and on its stunning beauty, something like that, right? If you're talking about a piece of woodworking equipment, you might say, the previous owner really loved this machine because of how quiet it was. Just something, make it human centric. That's part of the storytelling. And so, you know, uh, what I was saying earlier here is that what you're trying to do is use all of the media available, meaning that you want to have a lot of pictures. Pictures are basically free, right? It doesn't take very long to take them, and showing them online doesn't cost any money. It costs you just as much to display one item, one picture, as it does to display 500 pictures. And so you don't have to take 500 pictures of every item, but you do want to give people a really good representation of the item being sold. And so what that means is that, yeah, of course, you have one or two really nice pictures that are good for like the marketing copy, the lead image. But then just go around and take pictures of everything you can imagine. Put yourself into a potential bidder's shoes and think like what would I want to know if like if I actually came to look at this item in person, what would I want to know, right? I would want to know, of course, all of the identifying characteristics, year, make, model, serial number, all that good stuff if it's available. And I'd also want to get some context, right? So close-up pictures are great, but especially if I'm doing the in charge of the removal process, then show me some context of what the environment that the item is sitting in. And so at least, please, at least take 3 or 4 pictures. But for these lots that we're talking about creating stories and doing promotion, 8 to 12 minimum. Okay. Like, don't cheap out here. Like, really take a bunch of pictures, including close-ups. Each picture is worth a lot when it comes to establishing trust. Not, I don't know how long I've been telling people that they really need to include short videos with their items, but it's still something that auctioneers struggle with, to create videos for the items that they're selling. And I understand maybe not wanting to create a video for every single item. I'd argue that it probably is still worth it to do that, but at least for the top items that you're going to be promoting intentionally as part of this inbound content marketing engine, right? Please make videos, and even if it's something that is static and doesn't move and doesn't make sound, take a video anyway. Talk. right? A lot of auctioneers or their staff when they're doing videos, it's great. They're taking videos and they are silent. They are muted throughout the whole thing. That's terrible. I would rather that a person be making heavy breathing noises than remain completely and utterly silent. The viewer, the person watching the video, knows that there was a human being out there taking a video of the item. You can hear it, right? You can hear the sounds of them walking around. You can hear the sounds of the environment. You should hear the person talking. It's okay if they just say something like, "This is a really nice grandfather clock. I don't really know a lot about grandfather clocks, but this one looks really good to me. And look at how the hand is moving," right? Something like that. It doesn't have to be much, but don't go quiet, right? Use all channels available too. So one of them is going to be the eyes, right? The person watching the video. But then, of course, you want them to hear as well. So try to include sound in there as much as possible. And then when it comes to the description of the item, it's sad to me how many times auctioneers will say something like old clock, and they'll have one picture of something that, might be worth several $100s. It's if it's worth selling on your auction platform, it's probably worth 120 to 180 words to describe it. And one sort of cheat that you can do here is when you're doing your lotting and tagging, when you're cataloging the auction, you're getting all of these titles and descriptions together. You can just do sort of shorthand rough notes. Like you can even just do an audio transcription. You could just say, talk into your phone to create the lot description and then run that through an AI editor to improve the listing. So it'll take your shorthand notes about an item and translate it into what would be called here a dinner party description. What you're trying to do is you're trying to mimic the language that the people interested in buying that would use, in particular when they're searching. All right, so there's some basics of the actual sale components themselves. So, it's really important to give people an opportunity when they're bidding to be in the lead. So one of the mistakes that I oftentimes see is reserve prices, but also high minimum bids, high starting bids. And the auctioneers oftentimes say that they're trying to protect the seller's interest. They don't want to let it go for too cheap, so on and so forth. But from the auctioneer's perspective, if you are putting reserves, especially if you're putting high reserves, and if you're putting starting bids, and especially if you're putting high starting bids, you're kind of missing the point. This content becomes valuable through engagement. What kind of engagement are we talking about? Well, we're talking about them coming to your website and looking at the pictures, reading the description, watching the video, downloading the documents, whatever you've got. Those are all actions. But so is the bidding. Every time that a person comes to the site and places a bid, that's interacting with it. In fact, that's the highest and best interaction that you can possibly get on an auction site, besides paying an invoice. Um, and so, what if you discourage participation, you're going to get less participation. If you get less participation, you're going to have less competition. If you have less competition at an auction, then you have a dud of an auction. You are shortchanging yourself, the buyers, the sellers, everybody. The point is, give people an opportunity to be in the lead. So, that means let the price be as low as possible to start with, and trust the process. If you can't get the sale without promising, some high starting bid or some guaranteed amount, probably don't even run it in an auction. That's how serious it is, right? Put that in a fixed price sale, right? People should be coming to an auction because they're interested in using the auction process, which works and delivers good, solid results when there's competition. And you don't get competition without participation, and no one's going to participate if the starting bid is too high. All right. I wish I could have a show or a webinar just about that, and I would just say that on repeat again and again and again. It's an auction. An auction means that the bidders set the price, not the sellers. And of course, there's all kinds of protections, ways of protecting the seller's interest that we can talk about later. But you really need to do as much as you can to reduce high starting bids and indicators that you're not actually going to sell it to the highest bidder. All right. The other thing that I see is auctioneers think that it's a good idea to go to very high bid increments as the price goes up. It is true that you generally want the bid increments to increase. So if you're at a 10,000, you're buying a car for $10,000, you don't want to get outbid by $1. That makes sense. But don't make those increments too big. Why? Again, because you, the auctioneer, you want competition. You want people to participate. Each bid is worth something to you. Even losing bids are worth a lot to you because they build up to the final sale price. And so you really want to, again, just like in what I was saying before, you don't want to discourage participation. If you have high increments, let's say that you're in the $5,000 range, a $500 bid increment at the $5,000 range is going to chill the whole thing out, right? Nobody's going to participate. But if you were to drop it down to, say, $50 increments, you get a lot more participation. And the chances of you getting more than you even wanted, or more than the chances are that you're going to get more than you could ever get with the bigger increments. Of course, it's a fine line, it's a balancing act. I get it, I understand. But always lean towards the smaller bid increments. I think this might go without saying, but basically, soft close and soft close groups are important. If you don't know what I mean by that, a soft close auction is one where the time left gets extended if there is activity happening at the end of the auction. So if there's 1 minute left to go and people are bidding, it'll just keep extending the clock. The other option is to not do that, and that's called a hard close. But the science is pretty overwhelming in suggesting that you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't have soft close enabled. Hard close is more exciting, but soft close will encourage more participation and therefore more competition and therefore higher prices. And to the best of your ability, please, please, please do your best to avoid reserves. If you're taking a lot of reserves in your auctions, or you're taking a lot of items with reserves in your auction, there's a good chance you're you're shooting yourself in your foot, right? You're shooting your own foot. So the problem is that if you're not act it costs you just as much to not sell an item as it does to sell an item, right? As an auctioneer, all the activity, you still have to promote it, you have to do all the stuff. But at the end of the day, a reserve suggests that you're not actually going to sell it. And if the buyers know that there's reserves, it's going to chill the auction. They're not going to be interested in participating. So do your best to avoid reserve prices. I know you can't do it all the time, but do your best. So, uh, all of these, so if you do this right, if you engage in this flywheel, this auction engine in this way, where you select choice lots, you do a really good job creating rich listings for those lots. And then you go and you hand select the people that you put that information in front of, right, with that targeted campaigning. Then you're going to have good results. And then those good results, people are watching, your market, which includes both buyers and sellers, is watching, and they're going to see. They're going to see what they experience. They're going to see what kind of prices you get. They're going to see what kind of a job you do describing them. And if you're a seller, you want to see an auctioneer who is so engaged that they're doing this very work. You want to see them creating really rich listings that are really comprehensive, right? You want to see them out there aggressively promoting those assets. And in fact, if they reach you, the seller, right, then you can know, right? Like, oh, this auction company reached me. They would be good at reaching people like me. I'll tell you a quick story. I had many, many, many years ago, I had a bankruptcy liquidation of a tiny little nursery, for plants and flowers and that kind of stuff. It was not a big money maker, but we used this strategy, as always, this flywheel strategy, and went gangbusters, promoting it everywhere we could. And the end result was that, even though our auction company was in California, we ended up reaching all across the United States, and we had buyers at our little tiny auction from Florida. Well, the next thing we knew, that guy in Florida was hiring us to liquidate his multi-facility operation, which was, quite lucrative. And as a result of that contract, we got one of the largest greenhouse growers in America who was changing their operations around. They had us liquidate their operations in three different states, one of the biggest sales I ever did in my life. And this was all because I used this flywheel effect, right? This auction marketing engine to take something that was small and seemingly irrelevant and turn it into something that was incredibly had far-reaching effect, right? It reached the right audience, uh, and that audience, even whether they won or bid or paid or whatever at that auction, the fact that they delivered me those other sellers was quite valuable, and that happens time and time again. That if you engage in this process of really promoting the auction items that you're selling, you'll get good results, and those results become your sales team, as it says right here, right? Um, Part of this is that part of what comes up in all of this is a question of whether you should allow people to browse your auction archives or not. Um, and so, if you're just getting started, you don't really have an archive. And so there's not much to share there, in which case it might be better to not necessarily tell people to go and look at your archives that are mostly empty, but you can still, have closed auctions perhaps on your homepage, just to show that there's something there that you do have some track record. But if you've been in the business for a while, having an archive where anybody can go and look at the sales you conducted and what kind of prices you got, that high level of transparency will build a lot of trust with sellers and buyers both. But mostly the people who are interested in exploring your archives are going to be potential sellers, which is why you would want them there. And then, of course, people who are engaged in some kind of an appraisal process and they want to know what you sold things for in the past. So those are less valuable, but they may still be of value in terms of connecting you to future sellers. So you're going to engage in all of this, in this process that's going to generate a whole lot of bidders, and they're going to come to this one auction. And what? Are they just going to disappear after that, whether they won or lost? Are you never going to talk to them again, or are you going to have to start this whole process over again? No, you shouldn't, right? Like whether those bidders participate in the auction that you were promoting or not, whether the audience that you reach actually attends that auction or not, they can be promoted to again, right? So the idea is that you have these warm connections through all of your promotional activities. Some people were interested, but they couldn't bid because of the timing was wrong, or maybe they didn't need that particular piece, or whatever. They're interested in general, but they just, maybe weren't able to participate in that one sale for whatever reason. Well, the idea is that you're still going to engage in what's known as retargeting or remarketing. And so there's different forms of doing this. The three that I'm encouraging you to do is to, on the one hand, use a mailing list, a newsletter. So have a newsletter that people can sign up for. Most auction companies only have one newsletter, and if you're smaller, that's fine. You just have one list of people. If you're like a medium-sized auction company, there's a good chance that you should be segmenting your mailing list, because you don't want to saturate the market, or you don't want to over promote to the wrong people. And so if you are able to segment your list based upon interests, either the type of sale or the asset class or whatever, try your best to segment the list. That'll make the list more valuable to you moving forward. But even if you just have one, it's okay. It's better to have a mailing list for a single newsletter than none. So the other thing that auctioneers are oftentimes surprised to learn about in this sort of age of digital online advertising is that old school methods still work. And probably one of the oldest old school methods that still works is phone calls. And so maybe not in terms of cold calling, right? Just like randomly, that works too. But what I'm talking about here is, you're going to have people who signed up for your mailing list and they're going to get emails from you and stuff. But within your pool of bidders, people who've registered to bid with you, those folks are incredibly valuable. And if you call them up, not with a generic sort of not with a generic sort of script or something telling them, about an entire auction, but you just call them up and let them know, like, hey, I saw, human to human, I saw you bought a or you bid on a grandfather clock a couple of months ago, and we got another one up for sale. You didn't win that one, but we have another one if you're interested. That's an example, right? That connection, calling people, leaving voicemails, it does a number of different things. One of them, of course, is the advertising, the promotional part of it, which is why you're doing it. But a phone call also builds trust because in this digital age rather, a lot of people see a website as sort of they don't think about humans, right? And like I was saying earlier, we're human centric. People are interested in people. Even people who hate people are still interested in humans. So getting a phone call, a surprise phone call from your one of your favorite websites, soon to be favorite websites, uh, is it sticks out, right? When was the last time that Amazon gave you a phone call and encouraged you to come back? They didn't because they're a behemoth, that doesn't engage in this. But you're not a behemoth, right? You're most likely a small to medium-sized auction company, and you can and should call your bidders up, talk to them. And this will make them feel connected to you. They'll trust you more. They're more likely to bid, ask you questions, and they may even know a seller for you. And there is something that's known as retargeting advertisement. If you're not doing that, please research it. It's super valuable. Um, there's a number of different ways to do it. One company that I like to use is called AdRoll, ADROLL, AdRoll. Basically, what you do is you keep track of everybody who ever came to your website, and then you follow them around with ads. So, just like I was talking about with the newsletter, you can actually segment the people who have visited your website into different groups. So, you can, for example, you can create ads to target people who visited certain auctions or certain auction pages, certain items. So there's a number of different ways to do that, but retargeting the advertisement is it's so much more affordable, right? You already did all the work to get this person to show up on your website at least once. Now that they've shown up at least once, that's warm, right? Like keep them in the loop. Keep showing ads to them at least for a good month or two after they've come to your site. I think that'll be super valuable. So the point is, don't give up. Don't just stop at one sale. Make sure you continue to promote to the people who have shown up on your website, whether they participated or didn't participate. So this is the general message that I'm trying to get across, right? In not so subtle ways. What you're going to do, first, none of this is going to work if you don't try it. So just try it, right? Pick just one item, one asset and do an amazing job telling the story. Lots of pictures, videos, documents, great title, great description. Take that content, go and find somebody, one person, two people, go find a community that might be interested in that and show it. Be like, look, here it is. Look at what I made for you, right? Look at this beautiful asset that I'm selling. It's so important that I took all these pictures and I made this video and created this great listing for it. And now I'm delivering it to you. Of course, when I say capture the data, what that means is you're capturing the bidder data, you're getting them to sign up for your mailing list, you're getting them to register, so on. And then you're going to retarget, remarket to them, and then repeat again and again and again. This is what we do. That's it. We're done. Yay. Thank you. I'm glad that you were able to make it today. And if you weren't able to make it and you're watching this recording, thanks for downloading it and watching it, being with us today. I am going to stop the screen share now and see if we have any questions. So give me just a second here. Check the Q&A. Okay. Oh, I got, okay. How do you asset, how do you do asset-driven marketing when most of your inventory is common or low value? That's an insightful question. Um, I would say that when this question probably is showing up because you're a retail liquidator, that's usually what we are talking, the kind of company that we're talking to when we're talking about common or low value inventory. In those cases, you do the same thing, right? Except that instead of promoting necessary like one particular item, you might group some together. So let's say that you're selling retail goods and your collection, your auction has, I don't know, one pallet full of baby goods, right? Um, then even though you might be splitting that up into many different lots, take a bunch of pictures of baby goods, right? So kind of categorize it and then promote that category. But you engage in the same kind of process. The harder part there, of course, is the targeted marketing because how do you in the case that I just gave you, yeah, you could go and find like moms groups and stuff like that to promote to. But if you have a whole bunch of different items that could appeal to anybody within a single auction, it does make it a lot harder. In which case, you have to, in addition to doing what I just said, you also have to engage more in self-promotion in terms of presenting yourself as an opportunity, a place where people can go to get outrageously good deals. And then you have to let them get the deals. That's actually for smaller retail liquidators, one of the hardest things to do is to actually let the stuff go and let the buyers sometimes win. If the house always wins and the bidders never get a good deal, they're not going to come back. How much time should we really spend on photos, videos, and stories per lot? Well, I mean, I think if you kind of tier your auction, right? What I'm talking about doing is taking like 10, 20 items and giving them this deluxe treatment. Doesn't mean that you give the rest of the items short shrift, right? You don't ignore them. You do a good job with them too, but you do an exceptionally good job with like 10 to 20 items in the auction. And take your time. It might take you, 15, 20 minutes on a single, like a car, for example. That could easily take 15 minutes to take 100 pictures and a couple of videos. Yeah. So I think it depends on the asset, of course, and what resources you have available to you. You just have to do the very best that you can. All right. If you had to pick just one place to start, where would you focus first? Well, if you're already in business, you're already doing some business. You have some bidders, you've been selling some stuff, then I think the retargeting, that's where I would start because you've already started the process. You've already got the engine running. So you have to do that sort of critical part where you're capturing the data and then you're retargeting, you're promoting yourself to them through your mailing list, through your phone calls, um, you know, emails, however you can, the advertisements, the remarketing advertisements. I think that's where I would start if you're already in business. If you're just getting started out, then you have to start with step number one, which is getting something to sell, and then doing an exceptional job. Oops, I'm shaking my table. Doing an exceptional job promoting that item. All right, let's see. Is there anybody else got any questions? No, looks like we might wrap up just a couple minutes early, which is wonderful. By the way, if you're wondering, that's not real snowfall. a real fire behind me. It's a virtual background. I wish I was in a nice cozy room like this, but no. Anyway, that's it for today's this month's webinar. Join us again next month. You can follow me on LinkedIn, watch the Auction Method blog for information as well. You can subscribe to that. And we'll catch you next month. Take care. Bye, everybody.